let's assume that through the network, rather than cold, you get some people that have the capability to put all three systems, procedures, teams together. How do you compensate? What do you recommend for compensation for an external entity coming in as a leader in terms of the base versus the commission? What ratio? At what point everyone says, salespeople are coin operated, but at what point is that true for the sales leader versus the reps and anyone closer to the front line?
I think it's still 80% true today, right? I hear all this talk about work-life balance and other things, and in the back of my mind, it's like, that's neat, but just show me the money. Right. I'm not in this to be famous. I just want to be rich kind of thing. No, I'm sorry. I'm being glib. But sales leaders at that level, a C-level sales leader, are almost always going to get equity as part of their package, whether you're a small company or a big company. That's just part of the deal at this stage. So the younger or earlier stage you are, obviously, the more upside you want to reward them with, because you may not be able to pay a market rate salary, right? So you're kind of substituting equity for salary. Be very careful about your vesting schedules and all of that, have that all buttoned up. And then, of course, they should have a healthy commission, right? Override on sales, sales that they make. And then, of course, from the team, make it, I would say make it 40-60, 40% base, 60% upside, right? Try to strike that balance.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Fearless Founders. We've got Chad Slide here. Chad is an old acquaintance of mine, and I ran into him at the Silicon Slopes Summit this year, 2026, here in Utah. And Chad and I go back a ways. We've never worked together, but he's always intrigued me because he has a profound understanding of the sales motion, and something that we all need to be very aware of as business owners, founders. Revenue is king. Chad's actually been through 4 different companies from zero to exit 4 times. And he's helped companies from 6 million plus. And Chad can give us some background, but ultimately, Chad's perfectly suited to help us all learn and relearn the basics of what does it take to create a predictable revenue machine when everyone starts out as a solitary founder, starting from scratch, the one person with the 10 arms. So Chad, we really need you on this conversation today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
And now, Chad, what you do is you help founders actually go through that whole sequence, right? To go from the solitary person who's carrying the whole bag to helping them figure out how to create a system with employees, teams, sales leaders. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I work with founders who probably are, they've gone 0 to 1. Right. They've captured their first handful of customers or have a business that they've been running just as a sole proprietorship for a while, and they're ready to scale, which could mean a lot of things for, based on what their life needs are. But working with them on figuring out what the right model is, right, what the right scale model is, and then how they achieve it, how they can go achieve it. And where they, is it just them changing behavior and changing the way they're operating? Or is it go hire and bring in a team to run their sales motion?
Wow. And this is exactly the question I had, which I would like to jump with that as a main starting point. But Chad, how come sales? How did you fall into that? Is that something that your dad did? Why did this specialty start?
What's your origin story?
Yeah, what's my origin story, right? Well, yeah. I jokingly tell people that I grew up in sales, but I'm actually being serious about that. So my dad was in sales, my grandfather was in sales, all of my uncles were in sales. When I was a little kid and people said that they were going to work, I just assumed they were going to go sell something, right? That's just what you did when you went to work. So I literally did grow up in sales. And so a lot of my early memories were with my grandfather going on his route through Idaho and Wyoming to different furniture stores that were clients of his. And I would watch him interact with his customers and he would do things like walk their showroom floor and pick up garbage and straighten pillows and lampshades. And I just would ask him, why do you do that? Right? That's not your job. Why are you doing this? And he would always look at me. And I remember one time he looked at me square in the eyes and he said, Chad, if you'll always do or leave every situation you encounter better than you found it, you'll be very successful in life. And I've tried to live by that as best I could, live by grandfather's counsel and leaving every situation I find better than I found it. And it's just been a guiding principle my whole life. So yes, I sort of just inherited it. Right?
So I've been wasting my time with these behavioral and character tests. I just need to do DNA test of your ancestors or a VP of sales when I'm hiring. Like if the heritage is in sales, go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if they grew up in the environment, and they've got a good grandfather story, that's probably a safe hire.
That's fantastic. I knew there was something there. Chad, that's terrific. I truly believe that too, having raised my children, that you do the right thing regardless of your role. It always comes back. With that said, you said that you help a lot of founders, first-time business owners who reached a certain stage to figure out how best to help their sales motion. You said something very interesting. You said whether or not you can help them personally continue to be better at selling themselves or to create a team or a sales motion that doesn't include them. How do you decide between the two?
I think it's really dependent on the model, the business that they're running. A lot of founders will say, I want to scale this business and get and grow it to an exit, right? There's without any idea what that means, right? What that really entails. And so the first question I want to understand from any client that I'm thinking of working with is, what do you want? And I don't mean just what do you want, how much revenue do you want, but what do you want in life? What do you want out of this business? Because the answer to that question, the honest answer to that question, will determine the entire path, right? If you have a founder that says, I want $100 million exit, well, but behaves like someone who wants to run a mom and pop shop, maybe you don't want what you say you want, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I don't want to sound critical of that. If that's your life goal and that's what does it for you, by all means, carry on and take that path. But it's a very different path. And they need to be honest first with themselves. And then, of course, with anybody that they're bringing along with them. Because there's no worse situation than to hire a bunch of people under the idea of we're going to scale this thing and grow it to $100 million and then really not intend to do that, right? That's disingenuous and it's a disservice to the people you bring along with you. So really the first thing I want to understand is them. What do they want, right? What are they trying to accomplish? Then we start talking about the model and what the right approach is for them based on that answer. And it's a process. It's certainly a process, not an event. And we just kind of keep working and revisit that as we go.
Do you have an example, a story from the past, from clients just that says, hey, this discussion went this way, and this discussion went that way, so people can understand in a story format?
Yeah. So in a situation where we had I met some folks that had written some books and about behavioral change and wanted to be kind of a competitor, I think, to like Crucial Learning. It was very along the lines of Crucial Conversations and Crucial Influence, but it was their own sort of special sauce. And they had been a consulting, kind of a consultancy for about 13 years and had gotten to the point of about 6 million in revenue, which is a healthy, for a two-man shop with a few supporting casts. That was a pretty healthy sized business and wanted to expand and grow from there. And the more we explored and started to really start to attach some things or propose some changes to the business, there was a lot of resistance. And it was I understood it. It was fear-based. It was like, well, okay, but this is me relinquishing control and I'm not comfortable with that. And I'm actually starting to freak out about that a little bit. So let me come in and take control back, right? And so then we had to have that hard conversation of, do you really want this? Because this is the path to building a business. Your behavior is over here, right? You're driving us this way. Do you really want what you say you want? And it took them a little while. And I think that ultimately they came to the conclusion that a smaller consultancy was more their speed. And that's fine. Like I said, that's totally fine. But it took a bit to get there, right? It took a bit of reality check for them to understand the difference between a business and a lifestyle company.
That's a great example. And I see that as well. You're really coaching them through the initial get-go to understand who do they want to be when they grow up, but how do they want to get there is just as important. That dictates how you lead them in the sales motion.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had others that went the other way, right? I had a friend of mine who had run a company for 20 years, and it had kind of just been a lifestyle business for him. He had had employees, but had been hovering around that 8 to 10 million threshold for a while. And I think it was kind of just where he was in life, right? He had his first grandchildren show up. And then, his wife was starting to say, hey, these 12-hour days for the last 20 years, I'm not okay with that anymore. It forced him into a different life position where he was now much more open to letting go of some things and bringing in people who could take over significant parts of the business. And that was one where we made that transition, and then we're able to exit. We were acquired by another company. And so, like I said, he had come to that point. Again, it took 20 years, right, to get to that point. But, once he made that decision, then we got on the right path and we're able to get to an exit.
Ike, if you don't mind, I want to keep delving into this. Can you give us examples of how you've been able to help the lifestyle founders continue that and improve their sales motion versus getting an external team, new team members brought into the company and then growing? What do you look at? What are the fastest on both sides?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, it starts with teaching them how to say no, right? A lot of these founders who are running the one-man show are inundated, right? They're working 12 to 16-hour days, and they don't necessarily want to scale themselves out of the business, but they want their life back, right? And so a lot of times it's, okay, let's take whatever your offering is and put it in a box. Like, let's define the box. And if it's outside the box, you learn to say no to that, right? And you don't take that revenue. And that's hard, right? That's hard for a founder who's living that life. That's a hard place to get to, but it really is about time, right? It's bandwidth. You can't take on everything, even if it's revenue. You have to learn to say no to some things. And that's the biggest thing with the folks that just want to keep running this one-man operation or a small operation. The other thing is just teaching them how to sell, right? Basics of sales, and how to have a conversation with a customer that they're able to move in a direction towards a transaction of some kind, right? Not that they're always thinking transactionally, but a lot of these folks have great conversations that go nowhere. So really just teaching them some salesmanship, it helps them to further the conversation along, keep it moving, right?
Ask for the order as soon as you can.
Yes, exactly. If nothing else, just say, hey, so, contract here, sign.
That's fabulous. People have a hard time saying no because every dollar is precious, but it gets to a point where it is too many yeses causes very quality delivery and fulfillment of the promise. That's a whole topic there. But before I forget, let's jump to the ones where they do agree to get an external representative to take care of the selling motion. What do you see as a regular series of steps, 1, 2, 3 steps that they have to plan, participate, consider?
So I think the first step, once you've made that decision towards scale, is embracing the cactus, I like to say. And what I mean by that is I remember one conversation very clearly, a founder who had a software tool, and it was great, terrific tool. I could see that could be a really big thing for him. And he made the comment to me, we were kind of mapping some things out, and he made the comment to me, I'll be so happy when we find the right sales leader and I can just hand this off. And I looked him square in the eyes, and I think I even said, look at me. I said, that will never happen. And the moment for him was like, I said, it doesn't matter what happens in the future. You can never abdicate responsibility for revenue. And so that's the cactus they have to embrace, especially these technical or product focused founders. They hate it, right? They hate selling. And I understand, I get it. Selling is scary. Okay. And they can't wait to hire some sales reps to go take this off their plate. And I tell them that is never going to happen. right? So let's take that idea, that little dream you have, and put it out right now, because you're going to be involved in sales all the time. That's the first thing they got to do. The second thing is, and I see this mistake from founders quite a lot, is they go out and they hire a bunch of sales reps, right? Okay, we're going to scale. I need sellers, right? Because everyone equates sales reps with revenue. And every time I see it happen, I say, well, let's go let go of your entire sales team, because we don't need them right now. That's extreme. I would never say that. But my point is, the first person you need in place is somebody who really understands go-to-market motion. You need a leader, a seasoned leader who wants to join you. And that's an equity partner, right? Typically, right? That's somebody that you're going to share a piece of the upside with, because they're bringing things that you don't have with them. They're bringing the understanding of the strategy. They're understanding, how to build a pipeline. They're understanding how to hire and manage reps. They're understanding how to build the messaging and the positioning. Those are the people that you need first. And it could be fractional. Sorry, go ahead, Bina. You
Wait, because this is such a good topic. You telling me that in general, you have seen that small business owners should consider giving a portion of equity for this new motion to have an external, not dependent on the founder sales team, and they need to focus on the sales leader first, not the reps. And
Correct.
so the sales leader should have equity as part of the compensation package.
And maybe I ought to say it, maybe let me say it a little differently, because I don't want it to be focused on an individual, right? Because there's no Superman out there that you're going to go hire that's going to be the magic wizard that's going to build everything for you. So maybe thinking about it as you need the strategy and the infrastructure in place to be successful. So I work currently with a company that does installing physical networks, right? Networks in dentist offices. And they come in and they put the network in place, and they get all of the equipment connected to the network and set them up. And this individual has grown a business. They do 8 million in revenue across Idaho, Utah, Wyoming. And that's their business. And I came in and started to work with him, and he didn't need another sales leader. He could do it himself. What I needed to teach him or give him was strategy, process, and infrastructure, and then help him learn how to manage reps himself. So I don't want to make it about you need a person, right? Sometimes that's right. But what you need is strategy, process, and infrastructure.
I heard those same three just yesterday. Kind of interesting. Got it. Someone seasoned enough to understand the big picture and potentially bring in talent pool that she may already have within their network for the next steps of hiring. Otherwise, the CEO is just hoping that they get the right rep instead of having a leader be responsible. That's another thing that I heard you say obliquely. Let the leader be the one who hires, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Can that sales leader be tasked with selling personally, carrying the commission bag? Because the CEO is going to say, hey, I don't want just a staff member. I want somebody for my dollars producing. And then by knowing how to sell, they can be better at training and holding people accountable that they bring on.
I think absolutely any sales leader worth their salt is going to willingly jump in and say, I need to go close a few deals. How can they know what the right process and motion is? And I know that some will push back on me on that. I hear that a lot because, I know sales like the back of my hand. I don't need to go out and be closing. Well, yes, you do, right? You need to be in the weeds, right? If you're going to hire reps, especially for the first reps, and you're going to expect to have credibility with them, because sellers look under the hood, right? You have to have gone out and done a few deals yourself so that you can say, well, here's how it worked, right? Or works. Otherwise, it's just words.
Yeah, I think I agree 100%. Like, you need to be in the trenches as a sales leader. You need to sell a few things and get some scars, be in those situations, negotiate how the product is handled so that you can actually not only teach them, but also make adjustments to the messaging, positioning, like who's the ideal customer. Without those, you can't just rely on the sales reps' feedback and the comments from the AI summaries.
Yeah. I like the term player coach, right? What founders really need is a player coach in that role. someone who understands and can build what's necessary, and then go and do it with the team. Because honestly, really that first leader you bring in is playing three roles. They're your sales manager, your VP of sales, and your chief revenue officer, all in one person. And they just have to be able to live in that, be flexible enough to live in that.
Because this is go ahead, Ike.
It's okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Ike and I have seen this personally. Getting that right first individual is a tall order, because we all know that sales leaders didn't become leaders because they didn't know how to sell, didn't know how to say the right things. They're very good at it. They're very good at talking their way through to a close. But not all of them are actually very good at executing. Everyone can talk better than they can execute. There are a few who talk less than they execute. That's a rarity in a sales leadership role. How do you test? How do you make sure that you don't have the wrong hire? Because it's the hardest one to hire.
Yeah. My litmus test is your first sales leader should be your toughest sell yet. Meaning, as a founder, they came in and they examined your business like a customer would, a skeptical customer, right? Now, preferably, if you're a founder, your first sales leader is going to come somewhere from your network, right? That would be the ideal place to find them. You're not usually going to post a job out in the ether and do it that way. But the litmus test is really they should come in like a skeptical buyer and want to know, do you have your ICP really dialed in, right? What is it exactly? What am I selling? What is the problem we're solving, right? It's cool that you have this shiny widget, but is it really solving a problem, or is it just cool, right? So your sales leader, the right sales leader, is going to come in and they're going to look under the hood. They're going to really put the screws to you as a founder, because it's their career, right? They want to make sure that if they're going to attach themselves to something, it's legit and that they're going to make money. I mean, that's why we all got into sales, right? So I look at it that way. If they come in and they're trying to impress you and they're speaking in broad generalities, or they like to drop the logos that they've worked with in the past, that you run away from that person, right? That's, thank you, we'll get back to you kind of conversation. But you want that person that comes in and starts really digging and wants to ask the tough questions and forces you, the founder, to realize, oh, maybe I don't have this thing ready yet, right? Maybe I do need to. And then you can have a conversation. Well, what would you do in this situation, right? You start to get, how would they think about solving these problems? That's really where you start to identify those people.
Ike, what do you think of that?
Yeah. So let me tell you a few of the examples I've seen, and maybe you can help them make mistakes. What I've seen is 5 million to, let's say, 10 million, or it could be lower. The budget is low, and they, as you said, they need a strategist. They need somebody that will set the processes and then sell maybe, and then hire, train. This superhuman doesn't exist. Okay, I'm gonna have to compromise, pick one, and then they say, oh, okay, I need somebody very senior that knows what they're doing. They go find somebody that's been in the industry as a sales rep for the past 30 years. They've never done strategy before, but they're familiar with the space. Like, oh, I'm gonna bring that one. Or I need to find somebody that is young, hungry, like you swing the opposite. Find hungry, somebody that's gonna attack, that's gonna work just like me, the founder, 80 hours a day, and just pound it, and then they will learn with me, and then they will grow with me. Because I think founders don't educate themselves on all these components. They try to find the easy solution, and with the money constraints, they try to just focus on one aspect and then just hope the other ones will come up. How do you help them think through these things and then make the right decisions? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in as a bootstrap founder, right? You don't have the private, you don't have a big pile of cash that you can burn through. And honestly, from the 0 to 5 stage, I'm gonna bet that your sales leader is probably your brother's roommate's cousins, or your neighbor, or someone you knew, right? The friends and family contingent. And that, honestly, when you talk about big shifts that have to be made when you decide to scale a business, that's a big one, right? The people you have on your team are probably people who were willing to be early adopters or early participants with you because they know you, but aren't really the right seat for that spot or person for that spot. And that's a big transition they have to go through. So taking it from what you were talking about, that 5 to 10 growth stage or whatever the next tier is, now you have to go get a professional, right? And you have to find the right professional. And that can be tough. I use the same kind of litmus test, right? If they come in and they're really just trying so hard to impress you, that's neat. And it certainly shows that they have sales skills, but it's not someone who's going to come in and really tackle a difficult problem. And so it go back to what my story about what I told my friend, the founder, that's never going to happen. You're never, ever going to abdicate. They have to have the discipline, the founder, to learn basics of sales. Like they have to invest in learning it, right? They don't have to own it. They don't have to manage it, but they have to know enough to call BS sometimes, if that makes sense, right? You got to educate yourself is the best advice I can give you. You can't leave it up to somebody and then trust that they're always going to do the right thing, because most people will just do what's best for them. You have to know enough to call BS on your sales leader sometimes. I don't know if that helps you answer kind of the question you were asking.
One follow-up. So I think what you said is very important for especially technical founders to understand. Like they can't abdicate this whole sales to somebody else. And another way of thinking, like, let me know if you agree with this. Even if you find the perfect person and then he's taking over everything and doing it, but maybe he might be or she might be the right person now. But once you get to 15, 20, 30, 50, those are different people. You need different people. So like I said, you'll never find that person, because if things work out, you'll always outgrow the person that you have in that capacity. Is that how you see it as well?
I do. And I would say 9 times out of 10, that's the case, because the difference between a $20 million company and a $50 million company is vast, right? Those are completely different animals. And the same person who got you to the 50 isn't going to get you to 100 or half a billion, right? And it's one of the hard realities out there of just professional life is you're going to outgrow, the company may outgrow the person in the role. Now, if someone, loyalty is important, right? You don't want to just cast people aside easily. And
Sure.
There's, horror stories that sales leaders could tell you about having that situation. But yeah, you're definitely talking about different skill sets. The larger the sales organization gets, not every sales manager is going to promote to be a VP of sales, and not every VP of sales is going to be a CRO, right? Some people are just, they hit a ceiling, so to speak, and you have to be cognizant of that. You treat people well, you take care of them as best you can, but you accept that reality that you're going to have to turn over these positions.
Is the new sales leader's sales ramp any different in time frame compared to the reps that may work for him or her?
Mm-hmm.
Is there even a ramp?
Well, for sure, there's a ramp. I think that I think the sales leader's experience is necessary in order to even have the onboarding experience for the sellers. And the first thing that I want to understand when taking on a customer is, okay, tell me how you got your first however many customers you already have. How did that happen? Right? What were they buying? And I want to understand what motion the founder went through to acquire their first few customers, because I'm going to go out and repeat that process immediately. And then we're going to hammer on it a bit. Some of it just comes from a sales leader who should understand sales process, right? Understanding where they're at in a sales cycle. But it's incumbent on, their ramp time will take however long it takes, right? I mean, there's so many unknowns in that spot, but it shouldn't be like years. It should be months that they come in and they're familiar and starting to see some traction and closing deals. But then they have to turn around and take what they just went through and turn that into an onboarding process, right? You can't hire sales reps and just say, well, there's the phone book, good luck, right? Or there's your Zoom info account, have at it. It takes a lot more infrastructure to hire a sales rep than it does a sales leader.
Well put. Does that mean that in general, I found that most founders do not have a process put down. They just do what they need to do to close a sale. That she should create the process before hiring the sales leader, or let the sales leader create the sales systems and sequences with the support of the founder?
I would say let your sales leader take whatever you have, because you're right, the founders probably operated without a formal process. I mean, they have a process because they do it, but yeah, it's all up here, right? Let the sales leader take that and put it on paper, so to speak, right? And then adjust as needed. I have one founder that I'm working with who has done a phenomenal job getting his first 4 customers. I mean, and this is a person who's been in IT their entire career and is terrified of selling, but has just gone out and done it. I mean, just fearlessly almost. And he cannot, he can't repeat to me how he did it. Right? He like in his mind, I mean, he can tell me what happened to get the deals, but in his mind, there was no process. There was no rhyme or reason to that. And I've sat down and, okay, well, this is where you did discovery. And this is where, this is the demo process, right? And, oh, here's multi-threading and how you did that. I see how you did. And he would never, he doesn't know the words even. He doesn't know the terminology, but he's had it. He's done it. And so I've come in and helped him put that on paper. Oh, okay, I really was selling, right? And it's kind of a cool experience. But yeah, that's the thing that the founder probably lacks is he doesn't know the nomenclature, let alone what it does and why it's important. But a sales leader will, his leader will.
So how does a founder vet that capability in a new leader if she doesn't even know the language? How do they know that?
Pick up a book. Pick up one of the millions of sales books out there. I recommend, books like Solution Selling. I know it's a little dated, but it's good.
Something works, never is dated.
Yeah, there's a book I love called Solution Selling, but not the one we all know. It was actually written in 1985 by a guy named Michael Bosworth. I don't even think it's in print anymore. I have a well-worn copy sitting on my bookshelf. Brilliant book, terrific book, still applicable in today's world. So spin selling, Neil Rackham, Challenger Sale. I like Challenger Sale. Neuro Selling is another one out there that's lesser known, but really good. So go educate yourself, right? Ask ChatGPT or Claude, teach me about sales in half an hour, right? And you'll probably get enough to get through a conversation with a sales leader. But yeah, you have to take just as you're taking the time to develop your product, you have to take your time to educate yourself about sales.
Good. So let's assume that through the network, rather than cold, you get some people that have the capability to put all 3 systems, procedures, teams together. How do you compensate? What do you recommend for compensation for an external entity coming in as a leader in terms of the base versus the commission? What ratio? At what point? Everyone says, salespeople are coin operated, but at what point is that true for the sales leader versus the reps and anyone closer to the front line?
I think it's still 80% true today, right? I hear all this talk about work-life balance and other things, and in the back of my mind, it's like, that's neat, but just show me the money. Right. I'm not in this to be famous. I just want to be rich kind of thing. No, I'm sorry. I'm being glib. But sales leaders at that level, a C-level sales leader, are almost always going to get equity as part of their package, whether you're a small company or a big company. That's just part of the deal at this stage. So the younger or earlier stage you are, obviously, the more upside you want to reward them with, because you may not be able to pay a market rate salary, right? So you're kind of substituting equity for salary. Be very careful about your vesting schedules and all of that, have that all buttoned up. And then, of course, they should have a healthy commission, right? Override on sales, sales that they make. And then, of course, from the team, make it, I would say make it 40-60, 40% base, 60% upside, right? Try to strike that balance. Yeah. I talked to one company that I was considering working with as a client, and they were telling me that they were offering like $175K base for new sales reps. And I was like, what are you doing? And my sales rep friends are going to skewer me for saying this, but what are you thinking? 175K base for a sales rep. They're never going to, they're going to sit on their can for a while and collect their base. Like, no. So yeah, you got to be cognizant of that. You want hungry reps, but you want them to be able to live, right? You don't want them starving and desperate, because, sellers have options, especially your best sellers. I think you mentioned, going out and hiring someone who's been selling in the industry for a long time. Well, that's someone you're probably going to have to pay that 175K base to, just to pull them away, and then give them some sort of first year guarantee on the upside, right? Because That's what it takes to steal a good rep. The problem with that model, I always say, is just like you were trying to capture them, somebody else is also going to be doing the same thing. So 8 to 12 months down the road, they're going to get another call from another company, and they're going to show up with a bigger base and a bigger upside. And now you're playing this game of, constant like renegotiation. So you got to be careful with that. But yeah, that's the compensation structure I would look at, is 40-60 base plus equity.
I like it. It's appropriately aggressive to incent performance-based and behavior. The 60. I like it a lot. I was very happy to hear that. You probably saw me doing this. Right?
Yes.
So, interesting. So how does a CEO meet with a sales leader and hold him or her accountable? What are the systems? What's the dialogue, the frequency? What would you advise people? This is how you should work with a sales leader so you don't get swamped, you don't get bullied, you don't get hijacked.
Yeah.
Because they've got the whole revenue engine.
Multiple times a day. I mean, and that's just reality, right? The world moves at such a fast, and it doesn't have to be a formal call, right? But texting, I can't imagine that Satya Nadella isn't talking to his CRO at least by text multiple times a day, right? And the same is, as smaller the company, the more interactive it needs to be. Because as the founder, you're probably also the sales engineer, right? Depending on where you're at in your maturity spectrum, you're probably on every demo, right? Your sales leader will bring you to it, and then he'll take the process after the demo, but you're going to be on every demo. So you're probably well acquainted with the full pipeline, right? And you should be, right? You should be able to look at that on a daily basis and see where you're at. And then from a formal review, agreed upon metrics. That's one of the things that I've given to this gentleman that runs the dental networking business, is just metrics, right? Here's the metrics you manage your team by. And some of them are activity and some of them are performance metrics, right? You probably guess what they are in sales. But understanding the metrics to look at, and beyond just revenue, obviously that's the big one. But looking at, is our pipeline growing, right? What's our win rate, activity levels of the team, all those metrics, and just being aware of them.
Multiple times a day to make sure that there's no deviations, that course corrections can happen quickly, and or fires can be prevented before they get too big and too much.
Absolutely, yeah.
In your experience, is there a type of personality that the sales leader has to have? Because that's enough invasion of their time that they are going to have a little bit of a prickly moment. But if they're humble, but they're still the leader and they take pride in their work, they'll say, I'm with you, Ike. This is my CEO, Ike. I know we need to touch base. Let me finish a few things and I'll get back to you. There's a certain type of personality that can take the right amount of compliance and support and hubris in knowing how to run their own show. This is my show. I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it, Ike. I got it. I'll keep you updated. It's a tall order.
It is. And I think over time, and it's different with different personalities, right? Over time, that sales leader, if he's successful, will earn the trust of the CEO enough where the CEO doesn't have to feel like he needs to look over his shoulder all the time, right? He can wait for updates. But a smart CRO will consistently update the leader, the CEO, right? Hey, just had a great, deal progress with XYZ Corporation. Looks like we're on target for a June close. That kind of thing. Those are the updates that the CEO, that keep the CEOs going, right? And so having the I guess I would say emotional intelligence enough to proactively update the CEO. I don't mean that the CEO needs to be pinging the sales leader multiple times a day. Did we make our calls? Did we hit our numbers? That kind of thing. But they have to be connected. They have to be in communication, because founders will flip out. And I've seen it so many times, especially a bootstrapped founder who hires a sales team and starts watching his bank account shrink. Like, it will induce a certain automatic reaction that they may not even have control over, right? Their system will just hit the panic button. And so to counter that, you just have to be constantly communicating.
The psychology of the founder so well.
Yeah, it's tough. And I get it. It's their money and they're responsible ultimately for all of that, and they feel it. But at the same time, they do have to let the sales leader be the sales leader, right? You got to give them some freedom to operate. So one of the things I work on with some founders is, once we get that leader in place, let him be the leader, let him do the thing. there are, and I help try and coach them on here's the telltale signs of a leader who's not going to cut it. And we'll make decisions quick and get them out of there if we have to, but let's give them enough time to do their thing.
I think the initial conversation is also very helpful. I mean, maybe that's, I've learned this from, like, I made those mistakes in my first venture. Then the second one, I get better and better. That's what I'm trying to help with the founders here. If you hire somebody, a VP of sales, and say, okay, go, and then you don't talk to them for 3 months, and then the bank account went down, you don't know what sales are happening, and then from now on, I want daily updates. Like, no, from the beginning, let's decide here's going to be our cadence and all that. And it can be both sides, right? Like both parties agree. And then if one drops, then it's okay, that's the partnership that you expect, not just from one way direction or you're forced to do it. But I think setting that cadence up front for founders is going to be very helpful.
Absolutely. And I think that any sales leader worth their salt, it's not going to be, okay, you're now my CRO, VP of sales, whatever, go and do. And then we'll talk again in several weeks. It's, what is your plan, right? I'm going to hire you. I want the next deliverable I want is your plan, right? In writing. And we may abandon the plan or we may pivot from the plan, but I want to know that you've thought it through. I want to see what the plan is, because then when I meet with you again, we're going to pull the plan up and say, okay, where are we? Right? Where are we in the plan? Oh, we changed this. Well, tell me about that. Right? That's the kind of give and take, or the kind of conversation that needs to happen at that level. And so it's that kind of thing, right? It's not just go and do it and I'll trust you to do it. I want to see what you're doing. And I do, I have that right as a CEO, and a sales leader is going to, like a true sales leader is going to understand that that's just part of the gig, and they should be fine, right? If they can establish, like you said, that cadence up front, they'll be fine. There won't be any surprises 3 months down the road.
I agree with that. As we've all known, the happiness formula is closing the gap between expectations and reality. Sales particularly, we all have heightened sensitivity to an expectation, usually poorly communicated. And because it's such a lifeblood, there's a lot of drama, emotion built around any deviations from a perceived plan. There are multiple ways to dashboard for CRMs to communicate what's going on. I've learned that over time, there's nothing better than the old school phone, video. Hey, this is what's up. We were planning on this and it didn't occur, or we've got some changes in the plan. Here's the reason I'm giving all of that. Almost always, the forecast is not met. The closed pipe is usually smaller than what was forecasted at the start of the quarter, the month, whatever. And the hockey sticks that happen unnaturally so continue. And how do you communicate that in an ideal format, we want to have minimum deviation? Or do you pad the forecast, right? Or even the attainment goals, such that when the sales team doesn't hit that number, it's still above what you communicated to the board or what you put into the cash flow planning.
Yeah, managing boards, that's a whole different animal, right? Altogether, managing the CEO expectations, and again, this is if you're a small startup, right? And I mean in that 0 to 5 stage, you're in such an intimate, tight group. Everybody's working on every deal, right? So it's not like that you can surprise the founder. The founder is very involved in literally every deal. And so managing expectations is a lot easier, right? In that scenario, because they're so close to the action, they feel it, right? And they know if a number gets missed, it's not necessarily because somebody failed. It's just expectation met reality, right? To your point. When you grow and you bring in investors and board members, that's where communication again is tough. And I could go on and on and on about our current private equity model and what a terrible thing that is. But you almost are, you aren't, founders and sales leaders are almost in a place where they almost have to pad, not the pipeline, but the forecast, right? They have to and I don't want to advocate any kind of dishonesty or anything like that, but the model itself is just broken in that respect. So it's hard. I think that what we're seeing, especially today, and this is a tangent, but is you're seeing a lot of sales organizations hit their number without an adequate pipeline. And what I mean by that is their pipeline, they want a 3x pipeline, right? And I've seen this now in SaaS, I've seen this on the services side, and I've seen it in manufacturing even, where they're running at about 1 to 1.5x pipeline. They're hitting their number, but it's almost like more nerve-wracking because there's no wiggle room, right? You have to land every deal in your pipe, and it seems to be a problem across the board that I'm seeing. And people are feeling there's just not a lot of pipeline out there. I don't know what that is. I honestly don't, but it is kind of a phenomenon that we're seeing today.
Wow, thank you for real data. You're telling me that instead of 3x, they're closer to 1.5x pipeline at the start of the quarter, the month, whatever, and they still hit the number?
And they're hitting the number, maybe, or close to it, right? Close enough to it where they're not raising eyebrows, right? And
are you telling me that pipeline coverage is so small because in general, the market less open about their purchasing intent, that sales organizations are not even able to sniff that out?
I think it's probably a combination of things. One, I think the intent data that we have all sort of started to bank on is not as good as maybe we thought, right? Is the first thing I would say. The other thing is, there was a stat some years ago that said that buyers were 70% of the way through their buying decision process before they even engage a sales rep. I would bet that's 90%, if not higher, meaning buyers are not even coming to you until they've decided on you, right? Or whatever the case is. And maybe they have a process that means they have to get 3 quotes. But my guess is once a buyer shows up, they've already decided, which makes your job as a seller very difficult. So I think that's also part of it. AI research is certainly feeding that, right? Because you can get details on any options that you're considering without talking to anybody. So it's a much harder world. So I don't know if that's a lasting thing. I follow it pretty closely, and I'll be interested to see how that kind of shakes out, because it's not sustainable at all.
Yeah, I can tell you, like, anecdotally, that's also something I've heard. I don't know exactly the reasons, but I think people are, the customers, prospects are also making quick decisions, like yes or no to that I'm going to buy this or no. It's delivered very quickly. So the top of the funnel doesn't really exist. That goes like so quick.
It really, you're right.
You work with the people that are really interested only. And then sales cycles are not that long. Maybe that's because the people that are in my network is, they're not selling $100 million deals. Maybe those deals are taking longer, but at the lower end of the market, the sales cycles are also short.
They're happening quick. Yeah, there's a hidden, there's the sales cycle, and then there's this hidden decision cycle that's happening. Right. And it starts way before the sales cycle does. And then they bring in a sales rep. There's a lot of that happening. Right. And I think that it'll probably get worse before it gets better, just in general.
We've run out of time. What 2 things would you advise first-time founders growing their business on anything related to being more successful in the revenue game? What 2 things?
Sorry.
That's it. 2 things.
Don't forget the problem you set out to solve. It's so interesting when I deal with technical or product-focused founders. Necessity was the mother of invention for them. They saw a problem that they could fix. They made something, they created a product that could fix the problem, and then they became obsessed with the product. Don't forget the problem that you set out to solve in the first place, because that's what your buyers are buying. That is what they are investing in. They don't care so much about your widget. As neat as it is, they don't care. They care about the problem you're solving for them. So don't forget about that, right? And it's the thing you beat them over the head with repeatedly during the sales process, right? And I mean that in all kindness, right? Don't forget the problem you're solving, right? And then the other thing is what I've already mentioned is you never get to abdicate responsibility for revenue as a founder. It's scary, I know it. It doesn't mean you have to be out cold calling, but you don't ever get to abdicate that responsibility. It is yours.
Wow. What a nice boom explanation.
Right.
Right? Thank you, Chad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ike, is that all right? That's
Amazing. I
great.
think you're gonna have to come back so we can talk about managing the board and managing the CEO as
Yes,
well at some point.
I'll go on my private equity rant for you.
Oh, there you go.
Happy to hear. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. That's another wrap up. Chad Sly, fantastic sales leader who's helped us understand what's going on. And until next time, please share this with other people. Follow us. Until next time,